Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. President Trump has threatened to go into Nigeria guns a-blazing if Nigeria's government does not stop the killing of Christians in that country. Has the White House heard back from Nigeria's government on this threat?
As the president stated, Michael, if the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the United States will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may take action to wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities, especially against innocent women and children. I don't have any further announcements on that for you today, but I can assure you the President of the United States is watching this situation unfold very closely, as is our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
Caroline, President Trump has endorsed Andrew Cuomo in New York City's mayoral race. He has not by name endorsed Winsome Sears in Virginia's gubernatorial race. Why is that?
Look, as you know from this podium, I'm quite limited in what I can say with regards to ongoing political elections. I think the president has spoken for himself and what he wants to see take place in these elections today. Lalit.
Thank you. I would like to ask you about India-US relationship. What is President's thoughts on the future of India-US relationship?
I'm sorry, Lalit, can you repeat that?
What is President's thoughts on future of India-US relationship?
I think he feels very positive and strongly about it. As you know, he recently, a few weeks back, spoke to Prime Minister directly when he celebrated in the Oval Office Diwali with many high-ranking Indian American officials here at the White House. We have a great U.S. ambassador to India in Mr. Sergio Gore, who will represent our country very well. And the president and his trade team continue to be in very serious discussions with India with respect to that topic. So I know the president has great respect for Prime Minister Modi, and they speak pretty frequently. Thank you.
Hi, yes. The air traffic controller crisis ongoing. Secretary Duffy said he will now start to cancel and ground flights next week to maintain safety. Should people fly next week given this new information, and is the administration encouraging people to stop flying altogether and look at alternative transportation modes?
The administration is encouraging Democrats to reopen the federal government so this chaos and disruption to our air traffic control system in the United States of America stops. It is ridiculous that we have even gotten to this place and that the Democrats have continued to shut down the government with 35 days, our air traffic controllers continuing to work unpaid, every single major airline in our country coming out and begging the Democrats to please reopen the government. And you had a Democrat staffer who was quoted, I believe in Politico a few weeks back, saying, short of planes falling out of the sky, we are not going to reopen the government. That is a reckless and dangerous statement from someone who didn't want to put their name on that statement, but we know it came from the Democrat Party. And I think we're very clear. We want to reopen the government so we can resume travel in the safest and most efficient way possible, especially as we head into the busiest travel season of the month. We have Thanksgiving in a few weeks. And so Americans across the country need to make it very clear to their Democrat representatives that we want this government to be reopened so we can resume safe and efficient travel. Fran.
Caroline, as of last I checked, the president still had not commented on the death of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Is the White House involved in the funeral arrangements in any way? Does the president plan to speak at the funeral? Has he spoken to anyone in the Cheney family today? And does the White House have an opinion on whether or not the former vice president should lie in honor or stay in the Capitol?
I don't believe the White House is involved in that planning, or at least hasn't gotten to it yet. I know the president is aware of the former vice president's passing, and as you saw, flags have been lowered to half staff in accordance with statutory law. Jasmine.
Thank you. Back on the question of the filibuster, how much political capital is President Trump willing to expend to get Republicans to do what he's asking? I mean, will we see him at the Hill? Will he be calling folks over here? What exactly is President Trump planning to do outside of these true socials and maybe some of these private conversations to get Republicans to fall in line?
Look, I think you'll see. I think you'll see the president continue to engage very strongly and consistently with his friends on Capitol Hill. I don't have any meetings to read out for you at this time, but I think you should stay tuned and keep your eyes on Truth Social on this matter. The president's making his position on it quite clear. And again, he is right. Republicans need to play tough. We know that this is what the Democrats will do if they are ever given the keys to power again. And he wants to pass as many good pieces of legislation as we possibly can for our country and for our people. That includes election integrity reforms. It includes additional tax policy. It includes, fixing our immigration system further in ways that only Congress can. And the president fears with a Democrat Party that is so radical and opposes everything he does and everything he says, this is the only option for Republicans to move forward. Karen.
Question. President Trump said to CBS in the 60 Minutes interview that he did not know the Binance founder, which he pardoned. What exactly did he mean for that? I know it caused.
He means he does not know him personally. He means he does not have a personal relationship with this individual. And when it comes to pardons, the White House takes them with the utmost seriousness, and the president understands the responsibility that he has as president to issue clemency and issue pardons to individuals who are seeking that. That's why we have a very thorough review process here that moves with the Department of Justice and the White House counsel's office. There's a whole team of qualified lawyers who look at every single pardon request that ultimately make their way up to the President of the United States. He's the ultimate final decision maker. And he was very clear when he came into office that he was most interested in looking at pardoning individuals who were abused and used by the Biden Department of Justice and were over-prosecuted by a weaponized DOJ. And the individual you're referring to, that was certainly the case. Even the judge in his case said that the sentencing that the Biden administration was asking for was egregious and went too far. And so the president is correcting that wrong, and he has officially ended the Biden administration's war on the cryptocurrency industry, and I think that's the message he sent with this pardon. Karen, yes.
Back on the issue of back pay for furloughed workers, you said that the White House is open to discussing that with Democrats, but what would that discussion even be? There was a law, the president signed it in 2019. What could a discussion look like? Why is that even open for discussion?
Look, Karen, as I said, Republicans are talking about that with Democrats right now, and I don't want to get in the middle of those sensitive conversations. But as we've complied with the SNAP order, the White House, the administration is always going to comply with the laws. We're always going to comply with the ruling of judges across the country. But the Republicans are discussing this matter with Democrats right now.
Why would there even be a consideration of not paying those workers, though,
Tom
Karoline?
News Nation. Big day in the Supreme Court tomorrow with President Trump's tariff policy facing a legal challenge. What's at stake with that case? And if the Supreme Court rules against the Trump administration, what is Plan B for trade policy?
I'll tell you, the White House is always preparing for Plan B. It would be imprudent of the president's advisors not to prepare for such a situation. With that said, we are 100% confident in the president and his team's legal argument in the merits of the law in this case, and we remain optimistic that the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing. The importance of this case cannot be overstated. The president must have the emergency authority to utilize tariffs. Look at what President Trump has been able to do with the leverage and the power of tariffs. He's been able to sign peace deals all over the world and end global conflicts and literally save lives. He's been able to bring in trillions of dollars of investments into our country. In fact, this year alone, we are going to cut the deficit by $600 billion, namely because of the president's effective use of tariffs. And the president strongly believes that economic security is a matter of national security, and tariffs have a lot to do with that. And this case is not just about President Trump. It's about the use of this emergency authorization for tariffs for future presidents and administrations to come, and we're confident and hopeful that the Supreme Court will do the right thing.